Welcome commanders to the Barbarossa tutorial. In this game you will command a German army, build it from the ground up, and charge through Russian cities until you get to Moscow. Before we begin, let me just say this. If you're not a fan of the anime art style, but are interested in the theme and mechanics of this game, there is an alternative version that replaces all of the art with historical photographs. So consider that version if the art is not appealing to you. To begin the game, you're going to need to organize all gray supply cards, green army cards, and yellow strategy cards into same card piles. How you do this is up to you, but the rulebook suggests an organization like this, where all the columns are organized by color and all the rows are organized by cost. A card's cost is in the top right corner. So here we have all the gray cards on the leftmost column, the green cards in the middle, and the yellow cards on the right, so that cards can be easily identified and found. Then you're going to need to take all the pink support cards, shuffle those, and place them face up beside the other cards. Then take all the purple event cards, shuffle them as well, and place them face down beside all your organized cards. And lastly, take all the blue cards and organize them into fortified hills, strategic positions, and the remaining blue cards are cities. Take all of those, except for Moscow, shuffle them, and then place the shuffled pile on top of Moscow, and place that entire stack of cities beside all your organized piles. This area is known as the war zone, and it will be where you and the other players will recruit your army from. Each player will then take 6 horse-drawn transports from the pile and 2 grenadier regiments to make their starting deck. Then select any pile in the war zone besides the blue cards to remove from the game. You can determine this randomly or agree on a single pile. Once you've made your decision, either remove the pile completely or I like to turn it face down. Determine the first player by any means you see fit, and each player will shuffle their deck of 8 cards and draw 4. Then you are ready to begin the game. Before I explain how to play the game, I find that it's easier to explain what your goal is first. The goal of the game is to have the most victory points in your possession by the time the game ends. The game ends and final scoring will be conducted once the city of Moscow is taken. The best way to accrue victory points in this game is to conquer the most cities, as they will have the most victory points on those cards. But as you might be able to see, there are victory points available on other cards in the war zone. So to ensure that the game does not last much longer than it needs to, you're going to need to build an army of cards that help you take out and capture cities. To do this, you're looking for cards that give you attack point values in red, and the most reliable way to do this is to deploy units from the war zone that have this yellow box underneath it, because that yellow box usually means that that unit can supply attack points to you when you're ready to conquer cities. Every other card in this war zone is simply a means to get better army cards, to accrue more attack points, to attack cities, and that is your goal. So now let's learn how to play the game. I've already assembled a deck here that's a few rounds into the game so that you can see every phase of your turn in its entirety. Your side of the field here is called your combat zone and is broken up into a few different parts. Here we have our deck. Beside it will be a discard pile. In front of you will be your play area, and beyond that is your front line. How you organize this combat zone is completely up to you. This is the method that I find to be the easiest for me. Your turn is broken up into 4 phases, and the first phase is the starting phase, and it is at this point that any exhausted cards in your front line become unexhausted. Cards can become exhausted by certain card effects, although keep in mind that some cards will specifically say whether or not they can be unexhausted during the starting phase. After the starting phase, it is your tactics phase. At the very beginning of the tactics phase, you are given 1 tactic point. In order to play a card from your hand, you must pay a number of tactic points equal to the number in the top left corner. If a card has 0, you're allowed to play it without paying any tactic points. Once a card is played, it'll have a play bonus which you will immediately gain once you play that card. So this player still has 1 tactic point remaining, and they can choose to play the commando troops. And when they play it, they gain 1 more tactic point, and this blue symbol, known as a draw point. They gain these benefits immediately, so they immediately draw 1 card. The different points you can get are shown in this symbol reference card. Tactic points allow you to play cards from your hand. Supply points will allow you to purchase cards or use other effects. Draw points will let you draw cards. Reinforcement points will allow you to recruit more cards during the reinforcement phase. Attack points are what you need in order to attack blue cards. And victory points are self-explanatory. These are the points you need in order to win the game. So by playing this card, this player has given themselves another tactic point, which they can use to continue to play cards until they run out of them. Some cards will have an "or" in their play bonus. Here this Panzer Grenadier Regiment says, as a play bonus, you either can gain a tactic point or gain a draw point. Make your decision clear to all the players and continue your turn. Some cards will say that you can deploy them. To deploy a card, you take that card from your play area and put it into your front lines. Here, the Grenadier Regiment says you may deploy this card, and if you do, exhaust it. The Panzer Grenadier Regiment also says that. So now this player has boosted their front line or their standing army in order to make capturing cities an easier feat. But how do you capture cities? At any point during your tactics phase, it can be at the beginning, the middle, or the end, you are allowed to declare 1 attack against 1 site. Fortified hills, strategic positions, and cities are all sites. So, all the blue cards. Attacking fortified hills and strategic positions is simple. They have a number in the top right corner, and that's the number you have to beat with the cards either in your play area or cards in your front line. For example, if I wanted to declare an attack against a fortified hill, its combat value is 3. And so I just need to generate 3 attack points with the cards at my disposal in order to beat 1 fortified hill. When a card is in your front line, you ignore all the text in the white box and instead only refer to the text in the yellow box. So if I wanted to generate 3 attack points, I will look at my Grenadier Regiment. It says exhaust this card and you will gain 1 attack point. So if I exhausted 3 Grenadier Regiments, I would generate enough attack points to capture 1 fortified hill, if that was the site that I wanted to declare my attack against. But this player wants to take out a city, and capturing cities is a little bit different. To capture a city, you're looking at the combat value of the top card on the city pile. After you've declared that you're attacking a city, you must then draw the top card of the purple event deck and place it beside that city. These event cards will add to the combat value of the city you're attacking. So here the Russian Rifle Corps will increase the combat value of Sebastopol by 8, making the total combat value 22. So now this player needs to generate 22 or more attack points with the cards in their disposal. So this player could choose to exhaust certain cards to gain a number of attack points. Here, by exhausting these 5 cards, they generate 7 attack points. This tank gun battalion says exhaust and forfeit. To forfeit a card, it means to take that card and put it into your discard pile. If a card tells you to discard it, you're discarding it from your hand into your discard pile. If a card effect tells you to scrap a card, you are removing it from the game and returning it to the box. So right now, this player has only generated 10 attack points. But they can use the fortified hills and strategic positions that they might have accrued over the course of the game in order to reduce the combat value of the city or site they're attacking. Each of these strategic positions reduce the combat value by 2, and each fortified hill reduces the combat value of 1. So if this player uses all the strategic positions in their disposal and all the fortified hills, they will reduce the combat value of Sebastopol by 11. When they use these strategic positions and fortified hills, it says to return them to the war zone. So they will lose these cards and put them back into the communal pile. But this player is still shy 1 attack point. but they can still use the effects that are on the text within the yellow boxes. So, although this card was previously exhausted, it says to return this card to the war zone and gain 1 attack point. So they can use that effect now. As long as you can technically do what that card asks of you, you can activate its effect. So it could be possible to use both effects on one card. If your attack points are equal to or greater than the site you are conquering, you take that card and resolve the text in red. Here it says Sebastopol, after combat, forfeit 1 deployed tank. None of these cards are tanks, so it says if you cannot forfeit 1 tank, then forfeit any 2 deployed army cards. So this player can take 2 and forfeit them to the discard pile. Then it says if you conquer this city, deploy this card. And when you deploy a card, it gets put into your front line. You also take the purple card and resolve its text in red, and this card says, when you conquer this city, recruit this card. When you recruit a card, you take it and place it on top of your discard pile. And that's how you resolve a combat against a city. If you are unsuccessful and cannot muster the attack points in order to take a site, you will still resolve the text in red. After you resolve your combat, if you declared one, you will continue back to your tactics phase, continuing to play cards until you run out of cards, run out of tactics points, or choose to no longer play any more cards. Once your tactics phase is over, you move on to your reinforcement phase. It is at this point that you will look at all the supply points you generated this turn and your reinforcement points, and can recruit a number of cards up to your generated reinforcement points that doesn't exceed your generated supply points. And also, you start the reinforcement phase with 1 reinforcement point, so you can always at least recruit 1 card as long as you played some supply points. So here this player played 4 supply points worth of cards, and they played cards that generated 2 reinforcement points this turn. Remember, these points are generated immediately, so even if the card that generated them is discarded or forfeited or whatever, you still have those points generated, so keep track of those in your head. So that means this player can recruit up to 3 cards as long as the combined cost of those cards does not exceed 4 supply points. So they could choose to recruit any cards here in gray, green, yellow, or pink. When you recruit a card, you simply take 1 card from the pile that you're recruiting from and place those cards on top of your discard pile. Once you are done with your reinforcement phase, you then move on to your cleanup phase. At this point, you take all cards that are in your play area and place them into your discard pile. You will also discard all cards from your hand, but you are allowed to keep 1 card. Then you will draw 4 cards. And any points you did not spend, they are now lost, and they don't carry over onto your other turns. If at any point your deck does not have any cards remaining and you are required to draw a card, you take all the cards in your discard pile, shuffle it immediately, and it becomes your new deck, and then continue as normal. And that's how you play Barbarossa. Remember, the game does not end until Moscow is conquered. And once it does, the game ends immediately after that tactics phase is over. So the player that conquered Moscow will not be able to recruit extra cards, and the other players will not get to perform their turn if they had lesser number of turns than the other players. But just because you conquered Moscow doesn't mean you've won. As I mentioned, the winner is determined by whoever has the most victory points within their possession. That can be in your front line, in your hand, in your discard pile, or within your deck. Each player will count up their victory points, and whoever has the most is declared the winner. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments below. Again, if you are not a fan of the anime art style, there is an alternative version that replaces all of the art with historical photographs. I enjoy this game because it's a deck building game that requires each player to build their deck with a purpose, as opposed to build their deck with whatever's available. Each player must make conscious decisions as to which cards they add into their army. And just because you've amassed a giant army does not guarantee you the win, because each time you conquer a city, your army will most likely get reduced in size. Event cards can also turn the tides of what you thought was a surefire attack, and cause you to break down your army of your own free will. There is minimal interaction between players, but there are a number of cards here, including the support and event cards, that can allow you to interact with the cards in your opponent's possession. So that's it. Will you successfully be able to take over Moscow, or will history repeat itself? That's up to you. But for now, thanks for watching.